Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, hope you're all doing alright out there. So, what is a job that you may put off and you really shouldn't? Changing your brake fluid on your motorcycle brakes, particularly on the front. I'm going to do the front in this video. I'm not going to do the back in this one because my back feels fine. The front's felt a little bit wrong, not as positive as I'd like it. It could be a little bit of air in the line, it could be the fluids getting old, which I'm having problems remembering when I changed it, so it could well be pretty old. So in this video I'm going to show you how you change your brake fluid. I'm going to show you the standard method and I'm going to show you the we have vacuum bleeder at home method. There are two things I forgot to mention that are very important, so I'm going to do it now. One of them is that you should check your brake pads if you're feeling your brakes aren't quite right before you sort the fluid out. The reason I say this is there is a direct correlation between how much material is left on your brake pads and your fluid dropping. I'll talk about it later in the video. It's simple to understand, but if you have low brake fluids, it probably could correlate to very low pad material left, so check them. The second thing is that getting it wrong on your brakes can get you killed. I don't advise complete newbies to mechanics play with their brakes. If you're going to do this, have someone with you who knows what they're doing or have a professional do it. I am experienced in mechanics, and if you've got basic understanding of mechanics and you can pay attention and follow the rules, you can do this perfectly safely, but you really must pay attention to detail in how you do this, because as I say, if you get it wrong, you lose your brakes. And as they say, it's not that the speed kills, it's the stopping really fast. And, well, you're better doing that with your actual brakes than a wall. I have a video here on how motorcycle brakes work and why having air in the system and stuff is a problem, but just for the newbies, in case you don't know, in here is a hydraulic fluid which is used by the brake. This is like a piston in here which squeezes fluid down the tube, pushing onto little pistons inside your calipers which push out and press your brakes on. Should the fluid be old, it's hygroscopic brake fluid, so it absorbs water and it makes it spongier and just not as good and direct. It can also, well, that can actually more likely to cause boiling, which is where it's got so much water in it that when the brakes get hot they boil and they clamp the brakes on. Not a good situation. So this is one of the many reasons you should change this. It improves feel if it's old, and it can be a safety issue if you don't. Also, you need to make sure you have enough, but I definitely do. I just don't know if it's any good. By the way, this bike is on a stand, so its arse being in the air means it's going to look like it's overfilled. Something to note here is that I want to drain the fluid out of the system, and because this has two calipers, the way that the line gets to the brake changes the way you do this. If you have two separate lines that go one side and the other, you'll have to fully drain one line, then fully drain the other line. If you have a loop over like this, you can drain from one side and get all of it through. However, what I am going to do after I've got all the fluid out, the old fluid, through this system, is I'll then do a little bit of a bleed on the other side to just guarantee that all of the old fluids come out of that side as well. So the first thing to do is to open the brake reservoir cap, and I will point out now, if you have a Japanese bike and these screws have a little, what looks like a Phillips with a dot next to it, these aren't Phillips. These are Japanese Imperial Standard or Japanese Industrial Standard, I can't remember which way, what, JIS. These fit these properly. See that? See how like the screwdriver just stays there? I have a whole video on this. If I get a standard Phillips of the same size and ask it to do the same thing, if it wasn't all dirty, it just doesn't really fit right. See how it just could fall out? This one, no hands, hands free. That's how much better these fit. A set of these is about 12 quid on Amazon. I have a link in my Amazon store, which is an affiliated thing, so I get a kickback if you buy those screwdrivers. I've had these for a while, and I think they're very good. And as you can see, they fit so much better, and you're not going to strip the heads off of the screws, which is a very common thing to happen. Look how rusty and nasty that screw is. I'm going to actually have to clean that up. Another thing I advise doing is putting a cloth in place underneath the brake reservoir, so should anything drip out, it won't go directly onto your paintwork because this stuff is corrosive and not very nice. Now, what does this stuff in here look like? Is it going to be a nice gold? There's a bit of, oh, just notice there's some moisture under this cap, and that, to me, feels like water mostly, not brake fluid. Right, okay, we might have realised what the issue is. Probably just got to clean up this gasket. Highly spish of this liquid on top of the membrane. Even if you use the old school method of, you know, opening, squeezing, closing, releasing, putting a tube on here into a jam jar is a really good idea, because not only does it collect the brake fluid that you've taken out, it also allows you to see air bubbles in the line. And that's the thing you have to try and make sure you haven't got. And it's much easier to see if there's no air bubbles in a continuous stream down a tube than it is seeing, oh, did that bubble when it came out of there when it squirted everywhere? Plus you get brake fluid everywhere, and you don't want to. So I'm going to put my syringe on here for the minute, but it won't actually make a difference as to how this would work. This is the same as if it would be a jam jar. If you're going to hear a hedge cutter in the background, apologies, it's my neighbours. It's not a lot I can do. I need to get videos done. So I'm just going to put a tiny, and I mean a tiny, dot of WD-40 on that, because it's, I just want to make sure that it's got the best chance of coming undone without any problems. Right. And I don't like the feel of that spanner. Okay, it's pretty tight, so I'm going to use a socket just to loosen it, the first bit. There we go. And now the spanner will be enough. Old school method would be pull this, loosen this, tighten this, release this. Whoa, careful not to pump it too hard or you'll send brake fluid into the sky. Forgot about that. I think this is why I say put the cover on, but I want to show you what's going on. Okay, so again, pull, release, tighten, release. Okay, and you can see how that went down, hopefully. That's the old school method. Let's try vacuum bleeder at home. Hopefully you should see in the top reservoir the fluid start to drop. Yep. Now I'm going to let it get a little bit lower, and I need to put fresh fluid in because we do not want this to run out. And we can well overfill it because we're going to be sucking loads of this through. You might see air bubbles. Some of those might actually be coming out of the between the plastic tube and the nipple. Oh wait, I haven't loosened that off. Enough. I'm getting a lot of air coming in through the side of this tube, but it's fine, we can deal with it. It is taking the fluid level down. Tighten that up for a moment. Take the top of the tube off. Let that run down inside the syringe, or actually we can just suck it in like that. Then push back to the top to get rid of the air gap. I'll pop the fluid in the reservoir again. You just absolutely do not want to suck air in the top because it's going to mean you're going to have to bleed the whole system, which is easier with one of these, but yeah, avoiding it's better. Oh, one other thing to note, these giant syringes are actually available from Amazon. They're not that expensive. Okay, so I've topped the reservoir up. Nip that nipple back up. They really don't want to be tight, but they equally don't want to be loose, because obviously if that comes undone, you lose all your brakes, because the pressure which would put them on just goes whoosh. So although I am advising you to do this to your bike, please be aware you really must make sure that you do things right and remember to do everything up properly. I might not have the brightest lighting on this side, I apologise, but we are about to just repeat what we did on the other side. Let's just loosen that off. And suck. Right, just want to give this a few pumps, and if I do that with that cover off, it's going to squirt fluid up in the air. Also, if you've got the reservoir full, be careful you tilt the bike over. I think I need to remove just a little bit of fluid so I can use my syringe again to do that. Stand the bike up, off the stand now. There is a line here which is the lower point, and basically, as I understand it, you want to be able to see the bubble of where the air is right at the very top, so you've got a reference, and then you can see where the lower is if you ever get to that point. But you'd have to lose quite a lot of fluid to do that. I've made sure this edge is clean. I've cleaned this diaphragm up. And I've cleaned the little cap up. These screws were very rusty, so I've cleaned them up as well. And I think what's happened here is water has actually got inside the master cylinder, and that's what's basically ruined my fluid. So, when I put the screws back in, I've got a little tiny dab of grease on them, and I'm going to hope that that's going to fill the gap and stop any water going down the edge. There we go. So, fluid level, oh, sorry, just smashed the camera around. Fluid level looks fine, and that actually now feels much firmer. It's not squidging as much, that feels better. So there you go, worthwhile doing. Noticing that the brakes didn't feel quite as they should highlighted the fact that some water's obviously got into the brake fluid, and it's not as effective as it could have been. The fluid that came out wasn't too bad. Ignore the bits floating in it. I think that was already inside the syringe from what I'd used this for before. But yeah, there we go. That's our old brake fluid out. We can put that into a bottle and dispose of it properly. We have a nice fresh new brake fluid in here, good for a couple of years. So as I say, this job is extremely important to be done on a bike, but if you don't know what you're doing, get some advice from someone who's an expert and is with you and maybe can guide you through the job first. I am taking no responsibility for you because, as I say, if you don't get this right, if you don't do up those nipples properly, you can lose all braking. Another important thing to point out is that if your brakes are feeling a bit funny, don't just do this and replace the brake fluid, especially if the brake fluid looks particularly low, because that may just be letting you know that your brake pads are really wearing out. Because if you can imagine, there's this much material either side of the, the brake pad when they're new. The amount of fluid in the volume behind that is an amount. When the pads shrink, then they move closer in towards the brake disc, increasing the space inside the calipers, which means there needs to be more fluid used. So if you use your brake pads like really quickly, your fluid level is going to go down really quickly. You see, it's connected. Because that's basically why the reservoir is there, is to replace the fluid in the volume that's made possible by the brake pads wearing down. Well, there you go, reverse bleeder at home, being a big syringe and a piece of pipe, actually works great. Couldn't get a great seal on it. I'm so sorry about this noise. Hopefully you found this video interesting or useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and if you'd like to help support this channel, please consider doing that through the links in the description with Patreon or YouTube memberships. I also have a playlist for motorcycle mechanics, which has got all sorts of jobs like this that explain how systems work, how to maintain them, how to fix them, and even videos of doing complete rebuilds on my DRZ, and a lot of work to this XJ6. If you want to learn about motorcycle mechanics, I've got tons of videos there that you'll find interesting and will teach you lots. If you have any questions, ask away in the comments. Till the next one, bye bye.